There is a sound that Norwegian fishermen feared more than storms, more than rocks, more than fog. A single oar, striking water in the middle of the night. Because if you heard one oar on the open sea, just one, steady and slow, coming closer through the darkness, you knew what was coming. And you knew that by morning, someone on your boat would be dead. The Norwegians called it the Draugen. For 1,000 years, from the Viking Age to living memory, the people of the Norwegian coast passed down a single, consistent description. A figure in a boat made of half a hull, sliced lengthwise, sailing upright through water that should swallow it. Inside the boat, something wearing oilskins, a fisherman's coat, a fisherman's hat. But where the face should be, there was only seaweed. Rotting, black, dripping seaweed where a human face had once been. The Draugen was not a ghost. Not exactly. It was what was left of a man who had drowned at sea and never received a proper burial. A soul with nowhere to go. Trapped between the world of the living and whatever comes after. Condemned to sail the same waters where it died, forever. Screaming into storms that no one else could hear. Tonight we go to the edge of the Norwegian coast, into the darkness between the islands where the water is black and the wind sounds almost like a voice. Tonight we talk about the Draugen. The Norse understood death differently than we do. A good death, a death in battle, a death at home surrounded by family, meant passage to what came next. Valhalla, hell, the world beyond. The soul moved on, the body could rest. But a death at sea was different. A body taken by water, never recovered, never buried, never given the proper rites. That soul had no passage. It was unfinished, incomplete. And incomplete things, in the Norse understanding of the world, did not simply disappear. They lingered. They became something. The word Draugen comes from Old Norse, draugr, meaning something that walks after death. In the old sagas, draugr were powerful, dangerous revenants. They guarded treasure. They haunted the living. They were immensely strong, could change size and shape, and smelled of decay and deep water. The coastal version, the Draugen of the fishermen, was specific. It appeared only at sea, only at night, only to those who were about to lose someone. The fishermen of Nordland, the long coastal region stretching north of Trondheim toward the Arctic, had the most detailed accounts. They worked in small boats, often alone or in pairs, on waters that could turn fatal in minutes. Every family along that coast had lost someone to the sea. Every village had empty chairs at dinner tables. Every generation grew up knowing that the ocean gave and the ocean took, and sometimes what it took did not entirely leave. The rules around the Draugen were specific and passed down carefully. If you saw the Draugen's boat on the horizon, you turned back immediately. You did not try to outrun it. You did not try to hide. You turned back, went to shore, and you waited. Someone would die, but perhaps not you, and perhaps not tonight. If you heard the oar before you saw the boat, it was already close. You did not look toward the sound. You kept your eyes forward, you rowed, and you prayed. And if the Draugen called your name, if you heard your own name spoken in that waterlogged, ruined voice, you did not answer. You never answered. In 1857, a fishing village on the island of Senja in Troms County recorded an account that was unusual because it came not from one fisherman, but from seven. 7 men, returning from 3 days at sea, reported seeing a half-boat moving parallel to them in flat, calm water at 2 in the morning. They could hear the single oar. They could see the shape at the stern, hunched, still, dressed in the style of fishermen from a generation earlier. They did not speak of it until they reached shore. Then all 7 told the same story, independently to the harbour master. One of the 7, a man named Christopher Andresen, aged 34, died 4 days later. A sudden illness. No prior symptoms. He was the youngest man on the boat, and the only one who, according to the others, had turned to look directly at the figure in the half-hull. He had looked, and the Draugen had looked back. The accounts from Møre or Romsdal, the same coastline where the fishing villages still operate today, are some of the most detailed in Norwegian folklore records. A researcher named Kjetil Flatin, working in the early 1900s, collected over 40 individual testimonies from fishermen and their families, describing encounters with the Draugen across a span of 50 years. The consistency was remarkable. Half a boat, 1 oar, seaweed where the face should be, always at night, always before a death. Flatin noted something that stayed with him. The witnesses were not frightened people. They were experienced men who worked dangerous waters for a living. They had seen storms and accidents and loss. They were not given to fantasy. And every single one of them believed, completely and without reservation, in what they had seen. There is one story from the Lofoten Islands that I keep coming back to. In the winter of 1902, a man named Edvard Moen was fishing alone near the island of Rost, the same waters where the maelstrom churns, the same waters that had taken his father 20 years earlier. His father's body had never been recovered. Edvard had fished these waters his entire adult life. He knew every current, every rock, every change in the color of the water that meant weather was coming. He was not a superstitious man, by all accounts. He was practical, methodical. He had told his wife more than once that the old stories were for old women and frightened children. On the night of January 14th, 1902, Edvard Moen rowed back to shore at midnight and tied up his boat and walked to his house and sat down at the kitchen table and did not speak. His wife found him there in the morning. He had not slept. He had not moved. When she asked what happened, he said only that he had seen his father, out on the water, in a boat that was wrong, moving in a way that was wrong. He said his father had no face. Edvard Moen never went to sea again. He sold his boat, his nets, his equipment. He took work as a farmhand inland, away from the coast, away from the sound of water. He lived another 31 years and never once spoke of that night again, to anyone. His wife recorded the story in a letter to her sister. The letter still exists in a private archive in Bodø. What do we do with stories like this? We can explain them if we want to. Isolation, darkness, exhaustion, grief. A man fishing alone at midnight near the place where his father drowned is a man under enormous psychological pressure. What he saw could have been fog, or a piece of driftwood, or his own mind giving shape to a loss that had never been properly processed. That is a reasonable explanation. But here is what I find interesting. The Draugen legend is specific in a way that random fear is not. The half-boat is not a detail that fear invents on its own. The single oar is not a detail that grief produces randomly. The seaweed face appears in accounts from Finnmark to Rogaland, from the 1300s to the 1900s, from men who had never met each other and had no way to share their stories. The same detail, across 600 years, across 1,000 kilometers of coastline. Either something was out there, or the Norwegian coast does something to the human mind, something specific, something consistent, that produces the same vision, the same fear, the same warning, generation after generation. I am not sure which explanation is more unsettling. The sea off Norway is still the same sea. The waters where Edvard Moen saw his father's ruined face are still there. Fishermen still work them, still go out alone at night, still come back with that particular expression that people who work dark water sometimes carry. Ask them what they've seen out there. Most of them will say nothing, but watch their hands while they say it. Subscribe to Nordic Tales for more stories from the dark north. Sleep well.